Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 986 of the Juicebox Podcast. It is not episode 986. Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 985 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's episode features an anonymous female who's had type 1 diabetes for 25 years. Diagnosed at age 8 in the late 90s, she's now an attorney. She's on today to talk about her life with type 1, but more specifically about how she grew up and the drugs and drinking that started in her life at a very early age. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. I drink AG1 every morning and you could too. Use my link, drinkag1.com/juicebox to get a free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first order. Would you like to save 40% off your entire order of sheets, joggers, towels, all the good comfy stuff that Cozy Earth has? Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com. And you can get 10% off your first month of therapy at BetterHelp.com/juicebox. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Omnipod. Omnipod makes the Omnipod 5 and the Omnipod DASH. You can learn more about both, get started today, and see the pump that my daughter has been wearing since she was 4 years old at omnipod.com/juicebox. The podcast is also sponsored today by Touched by Type 1. Check out Touched by Type 1 on their Facebook page, Instagram, and at touchedbytype1.org. That website is where you're going to get tickets to see me speak at the next Touched by Type 1 event in September. Touchedbytype1.org. The tickets are free, but a lot of people have already signed up. It's going to be a huge crowd. We're going to have a great time. I'll be speaking a few times during the day, and so will Jenny. Touchedbytype1.org. Go get your tickets before they run out of chairs.
So I am a type 1 diabetic of 25 years. This month is actually my anniversary of being diagnosed with type 1 back in 1998. So that makes me 33 years old, and I am an attorney in the southeastern part of the country.
Did you say it was 25 years ago?
25 years ago.
Wow, that seems like such a long time when you say it like that. And you were 8 years old.
Oh, yeah, I had just turned 8 the December prior, so about a month after Christmas.
Like a belated gift.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was a great one.
I just yesterday put a bunch of likes on my birthday wishes on Facebook from 7 months ago. Do you think those people will be confused when they turn their Facebook apps on?
Probably, but I love it. I hope it starts to pop up on people's feeds.
Yeah. They're like, I looked and I was like, wow, a lot of people wish me a happy birthday. I never saw it. And then I felt bad about it and went through and read them all and liked them. And then I thought
they probably forgot that they even left a birthday.
Oh, there's no doubt they've forgotten.
Oh,
yeah. No doubt they've forgotten. But I, as I was doing it, I'm like, why do I care about that? Like, why am I, like, I kept thinking, like, maybe they're going to later see that and go, why did he like that 7 months later? What's wrong with him? You know what I mean? So,
right. Is
yeah,
he okay?
For certain, I think that's going to happen. One of two things is happening. You have external speakers that are still on.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are, turn them off.
Okay.
I'm hearing my voice through your microphone.
How's that?
I don't know. I'd have to talk first. Testing 1, 2, 1, 1, 1. That's better. Thank you. Okay.
Yep.
So you are 33 years old. You are an attorney.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you have had diabetes for 25 years.
25. That's right.
Okay. Why did you want to come on the podcast? I know, but why don't you share it with everybody?
So I was on Facebook. I'm a part of the Facebook group. and I saw an announcement looking for people to come on and do an After Dark episode. And I thought, well, now is my time to shine. I've got plenty of things that could fall under the umbrella of After Dark. Plenty of shenanigans I've gotten into in my 25 years of being diabetic. And also to say it all worked out. I'm here and I'm fine, and but not without, some consequences and complications. But
well, we'll find out about it. I appreciate you coming on and doing that. I actually, the outpouring of decency from people when I asked about that was really something. Like, I think at one point I was like, I'm looking for somebody to talk about mental health impacts and stuff like that. And instead of what I thought was going to happen, which is maybe I'd get a person to talk about it, I think I now have 6 episodes about this with 6 different people. And
oh, wow.
A lot of people would say, well, what are you going to do with all that? I'm putting it out.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful.
Yeah.
They've been incredibly helpful for me, I know.
Good. So, you kind of ruined it at the end. You're not a natural storyteller. You're like, it all worked out. Because you said you're an attorney, so some
there
people...
could be plot twists, who know?
Oh, yeah, but some people heard you're an attorney and they think, oh, God, it went terribly wrong.
My parents would say otherwise. Come on.
Are they still paying for those loans, or did they give them to you?
I think that they're just grateful that I'm not in prison. I don't know.
Not in prison? Really? Okay, well, let's find out.
I don't know. Maybe I'm being too hard on myself.
No, well, I mean, I can see your list here. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about it for a minute. So you're diagnosed at 8. Well, don't worry. I'll bring it all up.
Okay.
So you're diagnosed when you're 8. And give me just a little bit about that, because I feel like you're going to have a lot of content. So difficult, easy, don't remember it.
It was, I would say it was incredibly traumatic. I hadn't really been able to describe it that way until I got into therapy to realize that the whole situation was a trauma. I was sick for most of my 7th year of life. I got the flu, and from the flu likely came the diabetes. So I just stayed sick. I started wetting the bed again and throwing up and being very embarrassed about it. My parents kind of had an idea of what was possibly going on with me, because my mom, bless her heart, is a retired registered nurse. And so I think that they had good intentions of trying to shield from me what they thought to be true. But essentially what happened is I was told I was going on a vacation, pack your bags, and we show up at a children's hospital, and I didn't leave until a week later. And that was very confusing for me as an 8-year-old.
They told you it was a vacation?
Yes, they did. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
that's a misstep. I'm going to let you know right now.
It was. And because of course, when we got there and I realized it was a hospital, I locked them out of the car and refused to get out and made a scene and was rushed finally back to the ER. They knew I was coming. My pediatrician had called, and it was a whirlwind, tubes in my arms, blood poke, all that. And just being told that I was type 1 diabetic. And the only context I had for that was Stacy from the Babysitters Club series. I knew that she was type 1 diabetic. But in my mind, I thought that I was never going to be able to leave the hospital again for the rest of my life, that this was it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. You're one of only a couple people who've ever brought up that book series.
Really?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, people talk about it a lot online, but never bring it up on the podcast. And I always wonder if, like, why that. I don't know. You just took me by surprise when you said that. Hey, I have this image in my head of the old door locks in cars where the stem pulled up out of the door and you had to push them down. Did you have to dive back and forth in the car and push down all the locks?
Yes. And my parents, they had a keyless entry on the car. And so it was just back and forth until, they could finally just
beat you to a door,
win that battle.
They must have been like, why don't we just leave her in the car and go home? Are you an only child by any chance?
I'm not. I'm the baby, though, of 3.
Oh, well, then same idea. Like, I was thinking if you're an only child, they could be like, well, we could start over. But if you're like the youngest of three, they could be like, we have two that are perfectly functioning. Why don't we just go? If she wants to stay in the car, let her stay in the car. She'll figure it out.
Right.
So you had so I know this is a hard thing to ask somebody to remember back 25 years to when you were a child and everything, but did you have issues prior to the diagnosis, or do you really think this kicked you into a direction? When you get to omnipod.com/juicebox and scroll past this picture of this weird looking guy from the podcast, you're going to see some text that says get started today. And you're able to choose two different paths. Do you click on check my coverage to find out if your insurance is going to cover Omnipod and get started? Or do you click on I'd like a free trial of Omnipod? I'm going to take that pod for a test drive. It's up to you. I don't care. Head to omnipod.com/juicebox and give it a try. Scroll down, really read the whole site. You're going to see some stuff there that I think you're going to find very interesting. Very interesting indeedly-do. How about that the Omnipod is tubeless? You can wear it in the shower, in a lake, in the ocean, in your pool. You thought, that's not a big deal. Oh, but it is. Because every day you bathe, and every other insulin pump's got to come off. Not the Omnipod, it goes right with you. That way you're always getting your insulin. And you don't have weird high blood sugars because you disconnected and then forgot to put your pump back on. That's not going to happen with Omnipod. Omnipod.com/juicebox. My daughter's been wearing an Omnipod every day since she was 4 years old, and she's 19. That's 15 years. Is it? 19 minus 4. Yes, that's 15 years. That's a long time. Omnipod has been a friend through this whole thing. Absolutely amazing customer service, quality product. You get what you pay for. And actually, my insurance covers it pretty much completely, so that's not really an issue. Huh. Okay. I never thought of that. Hey, maybe your insurance will cover it too. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Go over there now and decide, do I want Omnipod DASH or do I want that Omnipod 5? What are you going to do? Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com to Omnipod and Touched by Type 1. touchedbytype1.org. Don't forget to go get your tickets and check out what they're doing. Touched by Type 1 is my favorite organization that helps people with type 1 diabetes, and I think you're going to love what they're doing at touchedbytype1.org. Now let's get back and find out the answer to my question. What was my question? Issues prior to the diagnosis, or do you really think this kicked you into a direction?
I think I was predisposed in a lot of ways, just family history wise. And this was one of several things that just kind of nature and nurture met very well together, and it was off to the races from there.
Gotcha. You got the wrong side of both of nature and nurture.
I did.
Lucky. I'm sure you're very good at something else, like, for instance, technology.
In fact, I've been described as quite a genius as far as that is concerned.
Yeah, by me. Eventually, one day, when I tell people that we've been recording for 10 minutes, but we've been on the phone for 30.
Yeah, I mean, I think your words were, and I quote, well, this is not the worst I've seen.
There have been some bad ones. You did pretty well, actually, for somebody who turned it on and it wasn't working the way they expected. It must be a panic. I've never asked before, but you're like, oh my God, right? Like this, it's not working.
Yes. Yeah. And then I'm like, now I just look ridiculous and like I wasn't prepared, and I, as a type A person, that drives me crazy to think that I've got everything under control. So
the pain was focused at you, not at letting me down.
Yeah. Well,
that's good, by the way. I don't know how I would have handled it if you said something like, "Oh, I didn't want to mess up in front of you, Scott." I'd be like, "Oh God, I don't know I never know what to say about stuff like that."
No, I feel like, and I'm sure you hear this a lot, but over listening to your podcast and stuff, I think I have enough of a sense of you to know that you really don't really get.
I was like, I don't have anything to do for like 3 hours. So I was like, whatever, this is okay. I was going to talk to you and then have a drink, and then I'm interviewing the CEO of Tide Pool at 5:00. So, yeah. And if people find that interesting, go back 6 months in the podcast and check it out. Anyway. anyway, after you're listening to this and you're the seventh person who talks about stuff like this in After Dark. So you kind of alluded to it a little bit. There's a little bit of family history. What would that family history be?
Substance abuse, alcoholism specifically, mental illness, anxiety, depression, those sort of things.
Are you Irish? I'm sorry to just say it like that.
No, that's a fair question. No, French, actually.
Okay. Still, that part of the world over there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get backgrounds from people when they talk about their problems.
And I think that that's an interesting way to go about it as well, and kind of get those stats out there.
Yeah. I mean, there's just some backgrounds that seem more susceptible to autoimmune stuff and other things. But interesting.
Certainly.
Okay. So you grew up with alcoholism in the house?
Yes, and I don't know that I realized it, recognized it as alcoholism. It was not like the sort of thing where I come home from school and, dad's drunk again, mom's, drunk again. It was more of alcohol was just always present, always around, and it always looked like everybody was having a lot of fun doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not the case at all.
Yeah. Did you fall into it yourself?
I did very early. When I was about 12 years old, and I don't even know what came over me, but my parents always kept the liquor cabinet stocked. And I came home from school one day and just thought, I'm going to see what that's all about. And so started drinking somewhat regularly for a 12, 13-year-old after school.
I'm going to go with anytime you do it twice in a row, that's regular if you're 12. That's, yeah, you know what I mean? By the way, I used to watch General Hospital after school with my mom, but this is you were way ahead of me. So you, wow. I don't know, to be honest with you, I hadn't gotten up to the drinking part, like all that in the list when I was kind of looking at it when we were first talking. And when you told me that your parents said you're going on vacation to the hospital, I thought they must have been high when they said that. But do you remember a bottle of vodka and a cigarette while she was saying it? We're going on vacation, honey. She meant she's going on vacation because you're going to the hospital, I think.
I know. No, that's kind of a common pattern in my family to this day, is that people don't like to be honest and upfront about when stuff is really just not great, and will go above and beyond to keep it from people and shield themselves from having to, I don't know, maybe let somebody down or worry somebody, when in turn it was much worse having no idea where I was going and what was happening. In fact, getting my hopes up and excited because it was a school day that I was diagnosed. I was like, hell yeah, I don't even have to go to school for the rest of the week, you know? And not knowing that was pretty terrible.
I'm sorry, Catholic?
No, Episcopalian.
Oh, no. Listen, you're just missing on all these. Like Irish and like French.
It's a near miss, though.
Yeah, I'm still right on the bullseye. I just didn't hit the little dot in the middle yet.
Yeah.
It's okay. Don't worry. The lady yesterday, I got so much of her life correct. I thought I was a soothsayer at one point. It's good for me to have this happen.
Oh, nice.
All right.
It's interesting too to hear what you think, and just those assumptions, because just having never met me before, so I keep it coming.
All right, that's fine. I just find there are some religious backgrounds that are very much about kind of protecting the visage, make everything look good. Doesn't matter what's happening behind the door, as long as the door's nice and there's a brass knocker and all that stuff, like we're good.
Yeah.
But that's also maybe human too. I might be applying it to just all the Catholics I've ever met. Who knows? And so you're drinking on the regular at 12?
At least weekly, yes.
What are you drinking?
And whatever had enough in the bottle that when I put water back in it, they would probably not notice. And I really don't know where that behavior was modeled for me. I certainly picked it up somewhere. And I started to also, one of the more regrettable decisions I've made along the journey with diabetes is I took up a nice cigarette smoking habit at the age of 12. and really struggled to part with that all through my 20s and did not quit smoking successfully until a year ago.
How did you enjoy mixing your downers with your uppers when you were 12? Was it I mean, what were you like? Were you like who's that guy that owned Playboy magazine? This is now how I picture you in a bathrobe, like in the house.
Hugh Hefner.
Yeah. I now picture you like Hugh Hefner with a scotch and a cigarette. You know, it's like 4 p.m. You're watching Bugs Bunny. You're like,
I'm like, oh. It's been a long day.
Been a long day. Homework. I got this diabetes
Yeah.
to keep up with. Everyone's wrecked around me. I got problems. Did your I was going to say sisters. I don't know why. You give me a vibe like you have sisters. But did your older siblings drink too?
You know, probably not like I did, but I would say they have their own issues that overlap all three of us. So I've got an older sister and an older brother.
Mm-hmm.
So brother's the oldest by 10 years. My sister's 5 years older than me. So we're kind of spaced out.
Was it one of those situations where if they saw you or like smelled you and they're like, you smell like a cigarette, that they were just like, heh, she's in the club? Or would they tell somebody? Or if they told somebody, would nobody give a crap?
You mean my siblings?
Yeah. Like, would they rat you out, or would they think, well, would your siblings rat you out, or would they think it was good?
My sister did, because we had this weird sister thing where I think we just hated each other when we were younger. We're super close now, but I think she felt like I took, especially one, she's the middle child, right? And then two, I'm the sick one and I'm getting all the attention, and she already feels like she's not getting the attention that she needs. And she truly had her own struggles, and I was the one that was getting the attention that I think she desperately wanted and needed.
Okay. This is strange, but hold on a second. Remember how I told you I was helping my son make cookies? He's in the grocery store asking questions about an egg purchase right now.
Oh, yeah. I'm curious now.
So he's cheap. And I've raised both of my children to be cheap. I'm very proud of this. No one will tell me otherwise.
I am too.
Yes.
Great.
Arden goes shopping. She picks up 3 things, puts 2 of them back. We'll never.
Very good.
Yeah, we'll never buy everything in her hand. And right now he's like, can I buy the grocery store brand of eggs? I can get 30 of them for $11. But I mean, that's a lot of eggs.
Yes.
Hold on.
It is a lot of eggs. Is he going to use all of them?
Yeah, that's the question. By the way, 3 weeks ago, he had never washed a dish before. Now he's got the day off from work, and he's like, I'm going to make cookies. And then 5 minutes later, he's like at the grocery store going, like, I don't have enough eggs. I'm very proud of him, actually. Because I think if this was you, you'd be high as a kite by yourself on a Friday afternoon.
I mean, yeah. These decisions, like my impulse decisions, like, yeah, I'm going to make cookies instead of do what I need to be doing and all that. But this sounds like a whole different situation.
Yeah, he just wants cookies.
Hopefully he's sober. I'm sure he is.
Neither of my kids, actually nobody in the house drinks.
Good.
But, so here's the question.
Mm-hmm.
You said impulse just now. Like, when you look back on it, were you trying to prove something? Because a 12-year-old, I think I agree with you, is mirroring, right? They're not like, at 12, you didn't say to yourself, I'm really uptight. You know what I think would cut into this? A little like vodka gimlet, maybe. So like, you know what I mean? Like, right. So you're just kind of mirroring, and then it just becomes a habit. Like, because
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people get addicted to things at some point in life, but sometimes I think we just make a decision to do something, and then we do it because we think that's what we do. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. And I think that it took on a life of its own, and it wasn't overnight where things got, like really, really, really bad. I mean, some could argue that it's bad when that's what a 12-year-old has decided to do. But I think on a level that I didn't recognize watching my parents is that it looked like it was working for them. And I felt so horrible in my skin that it was just like anything to get out of that feeling for just a minute, I'll try it.
Yeah, I take those points.
Yeah.
I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Didn't feel good in your skin. What does that mean?
Well, that's already a difficult age. And there was a lot going on in my life at the time and at home. And without going into too much detail about this, but my father had gotten into some legal trouble that was very public and political. And so I had that, middle school, diabetes, family just is kind of not falling apart, but everybody kind of goes their own separate ways and just deals with it the best that they can. My mom pretty much checked out for a few years, and I get it. And so it was, and I got to hanging out with the bad kids, quote unquote.
Well, you had the booze. You were probably a good friend.
Yeah.
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 Hey, I just have to stop you for a second. Like, Dad hauled away on the local news bed, or?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to tell me, but definitely tell
federal...
me when we're done. Okay.
Okay, I will.
Right. So,
I can send you the articles.
A federal charge?
Federal. Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'm going to guess racketeering.
Had to do with the local.
You don't have to tell me.
There was a civil suit in alleging racketeering. Yes.
Yeah, it's my favorite word. It's one of those things that sounds horrible and nobody knows what it means.
Yeah, it's like tennis or something. Is that like what it is?
Isn't it like undue pressure or something like that? Or am I going to have to look up racketeering? I'm not doing that right now. I have to be honest.
What you associate it with.
Yeah. You broke up for a second. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you get electronic sometimes. Like my voice comes back at me and then it doesn't.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm not sure why.
Well, I am the technology expert, so I'll, figure this out.
I can tell by the way you pronounce the word. So Okay,
we're doing great.
Oh no, are you kidding me? Listen to where we're at so far. You're drinking and smoking at 12. Your dad's been hauled away. Your mom's checked out. You've had diabetes for 4 years. And you're over here thinking, I don't know if I'm a good guest. I don't care if my voice echoes back 3 times. This is a great story. So,
I'm a people pleaser. Oh, it can get me into trouble sometimes. So.
Are you really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A recovering people pleaser, I would say.
Interesting. So does the drinking go to drugs?
Oh, yeah. And, just a lot of experimenting. I would say yes to just about anything, even though, like, I got to tell you, Scott, like, I was so unassuming. No, like, just my family and who I was, nobody would ever think that I was involved in something like that. I was very good at hiding that and keeping up a persona that would not maybe otherwise match what you would think someone, you know what I'm getting at?
Well,
like
here, I know what you look like. And it's a mind fuck that this is how you are versus what you physically look like.
Yeah.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah.
You look like the third best friend on a sitcom.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean by that?
Heard. Yeah.
Yeah. You're cute and you're pleasant and you are unassuming and you look like America. Like you really do. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's part of what's messing me up. I think if I could see you, it would be worse. I'd be like, this isn't real.
Right.
And it's stopping me. Knowing what you look like is stopping me from asking my next question, which of course I'm obviously going to ask right now.
You're going to ask you.
After the ads. Did this go to sex at a young age?
No, it really didn't. I was kind of terrified about that sort of thing. I had such low self-esteem. It went more towards attention. I wanted attention from other guys, but not in like a sexual way.
First of all, thank God. Like finally something went right for you. Like seriously, like I was very worried that the next thing you were going to say was then I started, and I'm happy to hear you didn't. But so you're doing those things. You said you're how'd you put it? You're experimenting, which I now in my mind I'm thinking of you lacing your weed with something, but I'm assuming you just tried a bunch of different stuff. And
I did, yes.
and no one's pulling you out of this, right? Like you're kind of living on your own, but in your house.
Yeah, nobody knows. I mean, at times my parents called on that like something was going on with me. I'll never forget. I was probably about 14 and I had gotten home from school and I passed out. I probably took something, I don't even know what it was. I would go into my parents' medicine cabinet, drink on top of it, and I was passed out in bed. And my dad comes to get me because dinner's ready. And he's like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And so he knew something was going on. They both did. But I think everybody had their own stuff going on that it was just kind of like, okay, we're going to keep our eye on that. But I think they thought I was smoking weed, which I had tried, but it was really a lot of, and this is still a young age, but it was a lot of drinking their booze and them not knowing it.
And pills, like that you would find around the house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you were just taking them like by mouth, right?
Yes.
Okay. We're not crushing anything and snorting it or anything like that.
Not yet. No.
Oh, do we get to that?
Yeah. Yeah. After that doesn't come until about 16.
Oh yeah. You want to wait. Spread it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
How much of this?
My mom always said not to grow up too fast. Yeah.
Don't grow up too fast, honey. We'll snort the ketamine later. So, how much of this has to do with the diabetes? And how much of it is just the hodgepodge that is your life?
I think that at the time I didn't recognize how much of it was diabetes. I think that I've just wanted to feel like normal. I was wanting to fit in. I don't know. I think it just added to my depression, another layer. And despite that, though, I was a wonderful diabetic. I still think I am. And I don't want to put labels on it of good, bad, right, or wrong, because it's hard, right? But I was keeping up all appearances and very involved in like JDRF and the American Diabetes Association. And I mean, I just looked like I had it all going on the outside.
Wow. That's fascinating. I didn't think you were going to say that. Like, I thought when you were going to say...
I bet, yeah.
Yeah. When you were talking about, like, holding it together, I thought you were going to say, like, my A1C was okay and nobody really yelled at me or anything like that. But you're like, no, I was at those JDRF functions in, like, a pretty dress. Like, and everybody was like, hey, everyone, look over here. Isn't she great? And you're, like, waving while they're raising money. And then you're...
Right, yeah. No,
then
exactly.
you're raiding the drink cart. You're like, let me help you clear this stuff off. I'll take these glasses to the kitchen for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, we my mom and she did a marathon once. Her and I raised money. She put together a team and ran for raising money for the American Diabetes Association, and we did a ton of work, sent out like brochures and did fundraisers and stuff, and we raised $50,000, I think, for diabetes research, and we're active in benefits with the JDRF, and A1Cs were great. I was one of the first kids, honestly, that they put on an insulin pump, because when I was diagnosed, there were insulin pumps. You had it was rare, and you don't. And
hey, you
so
broke up there for a long
earlier generation.
You broke up there for a long second. I'm sorry. You were one of the first people they put on an insulin pump. And give me the rest again.
Sure. So I was part of the younger, like first young generation that started to go on insulin pumps, because when I was diagnosed, even though insulin pumps were around, they were rare, and if you had one, you were an adult. And so as probably around fourth grade, so this would have been 2000 or so, or no, I don't know. I'm not going to do fast math in my head, but I was diagnosed in second grade. By fourth grade, I was on an insulin pump and worked really hard to keep my blood sugars. I had fantastic doctors at a research hospital, just really helping me. And then I'm not going to go off on too much of a tangent. We can get there when we get there, but diabetes camp as well was a huge impact on my life, and highly recommend it for anybody that has a kid with diabetes.
What a juxtaposition you are. So there's, on one hand, you're completely not concerned with your health at all. You're drinking, taking drugs, and smoking cigarettes. But on the other hand, you're taking very good care of your blood sugar and making friendships through community. You sound like
it's pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you giggled because it's silly. It's like you do, like, because you just assume, and I don't know if this is just, I don't know if this is me being ridiculous or not, but like those two things don't seem like they go together to me.
Yeah, I've always been a chameleon, and I'm really good. I can fit in with anybody. I can talk to anybody, and so, yeah.
Can you see these people? Because there might be a world where you point them out to others and make money. Like, it's between how you look physically and it's just, it's all none of it jives. Like, nothing jives with anything. And that's how you got away with it. Are your parents similar?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in their own way. Yeah, I would say so. We are all really good at putting up really, really pretty picture.
Smart people?
Yes, I would say.
Do you consider yourself do you drink anymore?
I do occasionally. And we can dive into that too if you want to, but I work with a therapist doing harm reduction, and recovery for me has not looked like flat out sobriety, but it has been, and I know this might be a little controversial and whatever, but harm reduction, and that has worked well for me. Mm-hmm. It really has.
Are you what they call California sober?
I've never heard of that.
Oh, I think
do I smoke weed? Is that what that
I think it means weed and drinking, but nothing else.
I call that the marijuana maintenance plan, but but no, I don't. It just has never done anything good for me.
Yeah, you don't like weed.
I don't. Yeah, but that's the one thing I don't like. It makes me very paranoid.
What did you like?
Cocaine, opioids at a certain point, and but my best friend is ecstasy, and but always.
Mallory, you broke up again.
It probably just has to do with being able to get your hand on it. That's fine. What was the last thing you heard?
You broke up again. I heard ecstasy, and then you were
okay. That's about it. Those were my favorite.
Were you just saying you liked whatever you could get your hands on?
Yeah, for the most part.
How long did that go? From what ages, and how the hell did you pay for it?
So, I don't know if this is common with other people or whatnot, but so I attended private school from 6th grade until graduation, and there were, we were all the squeaky clean kids, so to speak, but there's a lot of drugs, and there's people that have money to get them, and we're starting to do cocaine at 16 at like a bonfire field party. It was, I don't know how normal that experience is for other people, but that was my experience. And it's also combined with the small town, but it went on through once I got to college, and that was mostly just the drinking and partying, but started to experiment with more like with harder drugs or psychedelics, stuff that would probably have scared me when I was younger. I don't know. It was, my 20s were kind of a spiral a little bit at times.
Yeah, I mean, that checks out, because you said I tried harder drugs after you said ecstasy, cocaine, and you're like, then I ramped it up a little bit. Scott really got it moving. Acid?
Yes.
Okay. Heroin?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Accidentally once.
You know how it is when you do heroin by mistake.
Yeah, I was 16 actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
once
I
drank a
was
regular
told it
Coke
was
when I didn't mean to. Same thing.
yeah. To hate that. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I was told it was opium and it was
Sorry.
black tar heroin.
Fuck, sorry. I don't know why that's funny.
Right? No, it is. It is. It's me. It's what's funny about that story, and I'd use, not funny, but it was me and my best friend at the time, who is also a type 1 diabetic, right? If you're seeing a trend here, she was living with me that summer with my family, and we would go and hang out, have dock parties with some of other friends that were living there. And there was a guy there and was like, it's opium. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess that's fine. It smells good. And we both smoked it and yeah, it was after that we were told that it was actually black tar heroin. And yeah,
Yeah, Scott, it's
those
not
were the
my
kind of
fault.
decisions I was making.
I thought I was
What?
it's not my fault, Scott. I was trying to do opium. You can't blame me for doing heroin. It's ridiculous.
It's a classic mistake.
Oh my God. You know how you hear people say tomato. Like,
Yeah.
601, half a dozen of the other.
Opium.
Yeah,
Yeah.
opium, heroin, whatever. But no, I mean, I laughed because, and not at you. Well, let's be fair. I was laughing at you. Yeah, I was laughing at you.
I can take it.
But I'm laughing
yeah,
I'm laughing at you being in a scenario where you could mistakenly do heroin. Because to a person who doesn't do, that's a very avoidable thing is what I was thinking.
Right.
Like I've never mistakenly done heroin. You understand? It couldn't almost happen. Like I don't think it could happen. And so you're living, but here, listen, let's back up for a second for all the moms that are listening right now and are getting ready to run their head through a wall thinking their little diabetic kids are going to do opium one day.
I know.
Yeah.
I know,
Don't worry. Hold on. Because first of all, fair's fair. I think you get to at least cocaine without the diabetes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah, you were not
100%.
set up for success, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow you're an attorney. I can't wait to figure out how that happened. But anyway, like the idea that
Yeah, I know.
I don't imagine that this wouldn't happen to some degree. I think of I hate to say this, like your life sounds like a bonfire to me. And things just kept getting thrown on it. Like you could have been born to two people who weren't drunk all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they don't model that behavior, and you don't get those, maybe some of that genetic like predisposition, and then you go in a completely different direction, right? But then once you start doing it, like if my kids were drinking when they were 12, I'm fairly certain I would have been aware of it. And then
I have no doubt.
Yeah, and then I would have done something about it had that happened. Mm-hmm. And so, but you were in a position where they were like, I know we're not using your name because it's sometimes it's unnatural not to use someone's name, but you're in a position where like your father came in, found you passed out and was like, look, I don't want the chicken hamburger helper over here that we're having to get cold. So let's just get her out here, sober her up and keep moving. Like that would stop most people's lives. And so once you don't see any pushback, then you're just running forward. And now you're around a bunch of, I mean, is it fair to say wealthy white kids?
Yes. You caught me. Yep.
Yeah.
Wealthy white kids.
I'm just saying, you got what they call white people problems when you start talking about, it's not my fault. There was just so much cocaine at the bonfire party. So you're around enough money to hold up this lifestyle. And then I don't want to cast aspersions, but there are, I'm going to cast them pretty hard. So hold on a second. I didn't even mean
I can take it.
Well, it wasn't even about you, by the way. It was about the culture overall. Obviously it's not everybody. Okay. But there is a culture where people make too much money for their own good. Their kids are rolling around in BMWs when they're 16. They've got cash in their pockets and nobody's paying attention to them. Sounds
I had
like
a BMW when I turned 16.
See? Remember you said keep guessing, Scott? I get you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So,
I know.
and the reason I bring that up is just because I've seen it sometimes too. Like my son once said, you know, can I go to the shore house with these guys? And I was like, no, like their parents weren't going to be there. And these kids had unlimited access to cash. And I was like, no, you definitely can't do that, you know? But I was stunned by the number of people who were allowed to do that. I'm stunned by people who say things like, oh, it's cool if they drink here, they're going to do it somewhere. That's not true, actually. There's a way to keep your kids from drinking. It's not that hard, actually. You control their life. You know, you don't want to make a hard decision that makes your kid mad at you. I get that. But don't tell me there's not a way to like manage a 14-year-old into not doing cocaine. You can swing that. You know, that's not a heavy lift as a parent.
It's not. And I think it's worth mentioning too that there's plenty of the kids that I grew up with that had an enormous amount of resources to sort of fund a lifestyle that would allow for them to be participating in these activities that several have died, you know. That's where that goes, is overdose. That several are struggling to this day and can't get out of that addiction, and it's, you know, it could have been avoided. Well, that's what's really sad.
Yeah, it's a gluttonous mindset, right? And without checks and balances, because you're a child, and you have nothing. There's no speed bumps. So you're just like, I'm going to do a thing and then it happens.
Right.
That's it. I'm going to do a thing and then it happens. I'll do it again. I can afford it. I can do it. We can drive to it. You know, like that sort of thing. And you feel autonomous because you have the things. You have a car, you know, you have access to money, and then you can't govern yourself. Honestly, it's not that much different than social media. Like if you...
Yeah, I haven't thought about it that way, but yeah.
You drop TikTok on an 8-year-old, then they're going to be doing Lizzo dances in no time and not paying attention to their homework. Like it's not that hard to figure out, really. And so, and people aren't going to like to hear that because a lot of people are involved in it. Parenting is difficult. It's really hard. Right. It takes a lot of your time up. It takes a lot of your resources, and it is going to encompass a portion of your life large enough that you will look back and think there are things I didn't do because I decided to be a parent. But you can still have a baby and be like, give her a car. She looks like she'll make it. You know, and do your parents, do you speak to your parents?
I adore my parents. We are incredibly close. And we, you know, the picture that I've painted so far, to be fair, is not where we are at this point. Everybody has sought help. And as a family unit, we've just, I think, having been in a prior, things were pretty shitty, and everybody checked out, and, you know, the 12-year-old's running around like doing what she wants, and it's night and day at this point.
No, listen, it's also very kind of you to come tell a story like this that you easily could have buried and kept behind you. So it is really nice. And I don't know, like it's hard not to hear it and just think, wow, try a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, but at the same time, I could take the other side of this argument and tell you that your parents probably have significant issues of their own and it got away from them and they couldn't handle themselves, let alone another person. And they probably gave you a car because they wanted you to be safe, and they probably gave you money because they didn't want you to get stranded somewhere. I'm sure there was a lot of good intentions behind what they did.
Of course. And you know, honestly, what it was and what I've come to recognize it being as I'm become an adult is they felt a lot of guilt for me that I had to live with type 1 diabetes. And so they thought that material things would make it better. But here we are.
And just leaving you alone would be some sort of a gift, not to like lord over you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You need a little lording over when you're a child. Somebody's got
do.
to,
Yeah.
every once in a while, someone's got to point to you and go, hey, listen, see this stuff in the cabinet? It's not for you. I'm going to tell you a terrible story right now. Here, well, you can judge my dad. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My son texted me this morning, as I think we said on the recording. He's lived alone for like 2 weeks. And he sent a text that said, like, hey, I got up this morning and realized I had left a burner on my stove overnight. And it's like an electric stove, and it was on like halfway. And I mean, it didn't end up being any kind of an issue. But he shared it with us because he was like, I can't believe I did that, and like I everyone knows what that feels like. The first time you walk into your kitchen, you're like, oh my God, that burner's been on for 3 hours. And you feel that rush of like, I'm so glad we're all okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little thing, but everybody gets that feeling, right? So I said to him, I said, well, this is good. No harm. And you'll never do it again. It'll stick in your head now. And then we started kind of like joking back and forth a little bit, because I am a person who I always warn people about the oven being warm. So don't laugh at me. Hold on. This is a nice story. And so, oh, by the way, this is a really nice, it's a nice story right till it's a horror. So just hang in with me for a second. I would have thrown in with you here on the honesty thing today. Okay. So like if I take a pot off the stove and I move over to the sink, if there's anyone around me, even though they're seeing me walk away from the stove, I will gesture at the thing and I'll say, hey, that's hot. Or if I take something off and leave food in it, and when they come up to serve themselves, I'll go, hey, that's hot. Like, I'm very much about, it's in me, right? Like a rule. Like, I would never walk into a door in a house. Like, people who don't lock their doors, I don't understand how that happens, because I don't cross a threshold without locking a door. And I don't know why.
Astounding.
Okay. So, but back to the oven thing. Do you know why I'm so cognizant of the oven being dangerous?
I've got to imagine you've had some sort of interaction with an oven before that did not go well, but that would be a guess.
I grabbed at something. My father stopped me. And then to teach me it was hot, he held my hand over the fire.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
See how terrible that is?
Yeah.
And I don't drink.
Terrible.
Who knows why? Seriously. I'm like, why am I not 12 years old crushing up barbiturates and putting them in whiskey? Like, seriously, like, I don't know why it happens to some people and not to others. Seems wrong, doesn't it? Like, I should at least have had a little bit of a problem. Don't you think?
I know, you missed out.
Like, now I want to be clear.
Hey, it was a lot of fun.
It's a childhood memory. I don't think he barbecued the skin off my hand or anything. I didn't have a 2nd-degree burn, but he scared the living shit out of me while he had a hold of my wrist and he was moving me towards the flame. Listen,
that's horrible.
Here's probably what really happened. I probably got anywhere near the heat and he probably pulled it right away. But I'll tell you what, say what you will, I'm all about oven safety. By the way, please, I am not telling anyone to do that or that I think that's a good idea. I just wanted to outline that, nobody's parents are perfect. And it's bizarre. It's bizarre to see that something can happen to one person and then happen to another and their lives go in completely different directions. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Like, it really is. It's interesting. So, all right. So let's not glamorize your hellacious life, but you're saying that through your 20s, acid, other things like that, like you were going pretty hard, like through college, right?
Yeah. And, I think I did have 2 years of sobriety. I was a member of AA, very active one. And I think that time is what truly saved my life. Like, even though I'm not still a part of that program, pumping the brakes and getting a sponsor, a woman who could sit me down and be like, look, you've made a fucking mess of your life and we need to do something about that. Like, I am forever grateful. And it was a consequence of getting a DWI when I was 21, and which is driving while impaired. It's what we call it in the state that I live in. So like a Dewey. But that truly is what finally pumped the brakes.
And that legal issue moved you towards taking care of yourself.
It did. And you know what's funny is that I was so upset about how my parents were going to react. I was just thinking like they're going to be so mad at me. And the way that they found out is that my driver's license, it still had my home address because I was off in college. It had my home address back home. And so legal stuff started getting sent. You know how lawyers, those lawyers, they'll start sending you like stuff in the mail to, and my dad comes up to where I was living to talk to me. And he was driven there by my mom, which was weird. Like that was not a normal thing. And he's like, yeah, by the way, I just got a DWI as well. So we both got DWIs at the same time.
So just a little commiseration then. And,
yeah.
and by any chance, did you get a buy one, get one free with the attorney?
No.
That's a shame.
No, sure didn't.
That's a shame. So even in, yeah, isn't that interesting? So I don't even know how to put this. Like, that's an interesting decision by your parents. Like I don't even think I would tell you that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't want to normalize it for you.
Yeah. I think it was more, I'd never really thought about that being a weird decision for them to make. I think that they thought that I would probably figure it out because if I typed in my last name into the court calendars to see when my court dates were and stuff, my dad's name would pop up. And so I think they just figured I would figure it out anyway.
So interesting. Oh my God. Yeah. All right. So yeah, you get moving in the right direction. You go to grad school. I guess you got to go to law school, right?
So I take some time off between undergrad and law school, which I'm grateful for. Worked just kind of, I did fast food. Worked in like a grocery store, local grocery store chain. I did all sorts of stuff to sort of figure it out. And I'm glad I did because I finally got to experience what the real was like and kind of get some experience under me that I needed and has been so helpful as I've gotten older and in my professional life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you got grounded basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. You found a way to like live the way people are supposed to live with some responsibility and not everything just falls in their lap and expectations and limits.
Yeah. And I always worked, like throughout high school and college, I was always really, really good. I was a great student, top of the class. And so I always worked really, really hard academically, but maybe other things I was sheltered from looking back.
Well, you were doing you were doing the things that you were supposed like to continue on the we're doing well like gravy train, like get good grades, learn how to do something where you can make money so you can buy yourself your own BMW one day, like that kind of feeling.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
There was expectations set, but no real world perspective.
Yes.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. So what kind of law do you practice?
I do family and criminal law.
Do you ever bump into people where you're like, oh, I did this one?
Yeah. Honestly. And I bump into people that I grew up with.
Oh, wow. Do they look at you like you made it out?
I don't know. I think that I truly don't know.
Has anyone ever looked across the courtroom at you and went, hey, I did heroin with that girl one time. Don't listen to her.
Well, we thought it was opium.
I would love that. I just want that so that's how you would answer. Like, Your Honor, listen, in fairness, we thought that was opium.
Yeah. And we were 16, it's not that big of a deal. We were dumb. No, not at all. I think that I don't want to speak for them too much, but I think what I've encountered with them is that they feel a sense of shame. And I hate that for them.
A couple of people I grew up with got into cocaine when we were in high school. And I kind of just distanced myself from them as I saw that happening. And one of them lived a fairly tortured life through their 20s and 30s and, into their 40s, and then pulled themselves together and became an attorney, and then made a family and had a baby, and then had a heart attack and died at a very young age. And the heart attack is, generally speaking, attributed to the beating that they gave their body from the drugs. And
Right.
it somehow was, and this isn't right, it should have been this, the story should be sad the whole way, but it somehow was sadder because he had pulled it together.
Right.
Like it struck me harder that way, which isn't fair to people, because people who have not yet pulled it together, they could, right? Like, just, he got lucky and met a person who helped them, and everybody could have that, like you had
Exactly.
you got your DWI, and that helped you. And so,
Yeah.
were you able, like, my one question I forgot to ask you back then is that when you decided to make a change, you didn't know anybody to go to. So, right. So if it wasn't for I'm assuming the court orders the AA, and then you meet a reasonable person in AA. Is that how it happens?
Yes, they ordered AA and intensive outpatient treatment.
Because you're not surrounded by any reasonable people prior to that.
Um, even if I was, their voices were not as loud as all the others. So
you need to be scared into it on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the legal trouble scared you, or the parents knowing that you were doing that stuff? What scared you more?
I think realizing just how out of hand it had gotten. I think it had normalized to me because I had been doing it from such a young age that it never occurred to me that the decisions I was making were destructive, not only to myself, but now we've got innocent people on the road. And here I come. I carried a lot of guilt about that. And I never wanted to put other people in that position again. I think I finally was just, the shame had always been there, but it was bad. And when they put me in the drunk tank and I didn't really have anybody to call to come get me, I was just like, I can't keep doing this. I've got my whole life ahead of me, and I'm not getting anything positive out of it.
I think and this is me after an hour talking to you. Well, that's not fair. An hour and 20 minutes where you couldn't make the headset work in an hour while we've been recording.
Yeah.
But I think one of your superpowers might be that I think you genuinely are a nice person.
Thank you. And I would like to think so. I do care a lot about other people. I really do. Almost too much. And I think too, I've always been an incredibly sensitive person.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just wanted to, at times when the going got rough, dulled that out a little bit.
There's too much to handle.
But too much.
Yeah.
But there's other ways of doing that.
Yeah, like
healthier ways.
You go for a jog.
Oh God, no. Mm-mm.
Could be one of those scary joggy people that jog at like 6 a.m. and 5 a.m, and like you see them and you're like, why is that happening? And then now they're just trying to stop themselves from doing heroin.
Mistakenly, yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, on purpose. And yeah, opium.
Yeah, I think I just no, you're fine. Yeah, no, I've always just been a sensitive from the time I was a child until, I mean, that's who I am. Just trying to find my place in the world and getting kind of bumped around while doing it. And I did have stuff in my life that just, like we've already alluded to, lit a match and threw it on the gasoline that was already there. And it's taken a lot of work to undo that, but I don't think I would change anything. I do think the lessons and things that I've learned along the way are what helped me to help people that I could easily see myself being in their same position.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of an empathy and a compassion for people that might otherwise not be shown it by, whether it be the justice system or society or what have you, that there's always something more going on beneath the surface, and sort of trying to understand what went wrong in their lives and how can I help them without judgment.
Yeah, that's needed in the world, and there's not enough of that. Maybe you went through your thing so you could provide it for other people, and it sounds what you're doing too. I don't think there's many babies that come out and are predisposed to have problems their whole lives. Like you get there through decisions that adults make around you first. And, that could be anything from, nature, nurture, like all that stuff, honestly. And you were able to finally like back out enough to see yourself too, which was it just shows like what value there is just pausing sometimes and just stepping back and evaluating yourself,
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions around diabetes. People are like, oh, good, fine.
Okay.
I listened to this diabetes podcast, and there's a how-to on how to do heroin.
Or how not to, rather.
By the way, if you're a kid and you're listening, like if this story doesn't make you think, I am not doing cocaine or heroin, I don't know, you were going to do it anyway, because I mean, this is a tale of what not to do. But how were you possibly managing your blood sugars, like when you were loaded?
Yeah. I used to take a lot of pride in that, and which might be like a little sick. I don't know, but I had a lot of really great resources young and starting out, a lot of education surrounding diabetes. I had a fantastic team. I had a mom who was a nurse and helped me understand how everything works. And so the diabetes was never really that much of an issue. I knew how alcohol would affect my blood sugar. I knew what I needed to do to be safe. I just was fortunate enough to have such good resources that even when I'm, wasted, it's like autopilot. I know what to do.
Yeah.
And there were times when, there was some close calls, and I don't know why those were not wake up calls for me, but for the most part, I had it under control, which was exhausting, honestly, to have to balance that on top of the diabetes.
Yeah. So, like low blood sugars that were dangerous, things like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Things where you're like, later, you're like, oh, I almost died.
Yeah. My dad actually, I was at a house party. It was a PJ party. So that's like a kind of a drink where you pour every kind of alcohol into a cooler, sugar, and load it up and all that. And I was 16, I was in high school, and my dad had to come and carry me out of the party. I had passed out. I was unconscious. Couldn't really tell you any more about what happened, but fortunately, there was another type 1 diabetic there who helped me and was like, no, we need to call somebody. I really, truly think that if she hadn't have been there, nobody would have done anything for me.
Yeah, they would have just thought you were drunk. They would have thought you were drunk, and they just would have left you be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I heard a story like that once about a kid in college who got real loaded, and nobody around him knew he had diabetes, and his parents had to like drive hours to the school to like collect him from the floor of a house and take him to the hospital. And they couldn't get a hold of him, and so they just drove to where he was.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's the horrible.
Right.
Okay. So, my last thing to ask you, like my last upbeat question, is you somehow had an eating disorder in there as well?
Yeah. That and self-harm, just checking all the boxes. Yeah. So I think I was getting messages as a as a girl and pressure to look some type of way. And, I've never been overweight. I don't know, but it's difficult. It was a difficult struggle. And I put so much weight on like a number on a scale. And I think that came from the diabetes. I think I became so obsessed with what my blood sugar was, and attributing that as a judgment on my value as a human being. And so I would say that diabulimia and anorexia were almost like, I don't want to say a natural outcome of like that obsession and stuff, but I definitely attribute it to that, if that makes any sense.
It does for you.
Jumbled.
And I mean that like kindly, but because those same pressures don't send some people in that direction. Like that's the thing that I'm endlessly fascinated by when I'm talking to people. And I'll bring it up sometimes, like when I'm talking to Erica about some of the like more mental health stuff. But it's fascinating that you could put two people in the same pressure cooker and one of them comes out one way and one comes out the other way. Like your story.
Yeah.
Listen, there's a person out here somewhere who's like, oh, I had alcoholic parents too. And I just like, I went the other way. And, I was great with my numbers too. And there was a lot of pressure, but I never felt like blah, blah, blah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's somehow like I'm using the word fascinating, but it's sad. Like it's just like, why does it work this way for somebody and not that way for everybody? It seems unfair, honestly, of all the things. And what do you like, listen, I just saw a post on the Facebook group last night where a mom was looking for a facility to take a child who came to her and said that she was anorexic. And so what do you think parents should be looking for? And then what do you think they should do when they see it? What would have helped you?
I think that's a great question. And what I immediately think back on is when I was younger. In fact, when I was about 12. And back then, there was no getting like your A1C back the same day that you go to the endocrinologist. Mm-hmm. What would happen is you would get a letter in the mail maybe 2 weeks later that tells you all the good news or bad news. And I remember getting this letter where my A1C had gone up a little bit. I couldn't tell you what it was, but in all capital letters, the doctor wrote, "This is bad. This needs to change," and stuff like that. And I just cried and cried because I knew how hard I had worked and that I was having a difficult time.
Yeah.
And it's stuff like that writes on the slate of who you are. And so I started to attribute that as my value as a person. And I think that while parents need to be honest with their kids, this blood sugar is high, like here's what you need to do, we need to work on it, or maybe eat this instead of that, or this affects your blood sugars in this ways. Keep it general, like don't try to ascribe good, bad, right, or wrong to these numbers, because I know myself and many other diabetics really internalize that, and it adds like this shame that is so hard to just snap out of. And I've carried that with me for a long time and got the help I needed with it, but not without getting some bumps and bruises along the way.
Yeah. I would add and point out that you should handle it that way, whether you think your kid is the one who will rise above this or not, because you very well may be wrong about who they are.
Right.
And even though we're not using your name, if people could see you, they'd be stunned that this is your story. And I know that's not exactly like, I don't know, people are like, what does it matter what people look like? It matters in this situation because I know what you look like and you don't look like this happened to you. You don't like, I don't know how to put that into words, but you are not the one that I would have put this on. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I do. Yeah. And so it's always interesting. Obviously my husband knows the story, but I'm really good at, like I said, I'm a bit of a chameleon, and it's, yeah.
That's my point, by the way, is that if somebody's listening to this and thinking, oh, that's not how my kid's going to handle this, like, you might not know, you
might not know.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to essentially say, is that, especially going to diabetes camp, I mean, some of the best friends that I've made in this world, I met at diabetes camp, because 1 week out of my life as a 12, 13, 14, even 16-year-old, I was normal, quote unquote normal. Yeah. If you didn't have diabetes, then you were weird. And so we have really strong bonds, and I can tell you that not all of them, but I can point to particular ones where I see substance abuse. Like, I think that can be a part of the puzzle sometimes for people. And so it's not automatic, and it's not everybody, but just to be aware that some of us are really, really good at hiding this, and we just don't want to let people down. We don't know how to ask for help. And I just want parents to know that sometimes it's okay to interfere with your kids and say, look, something's going on. What is it? And they might push back, but they need that.
Yeah, if you just lock them in their room without their phone for a couple hours, they'll break. It doesn't take them long. Yeah, they'll just be like, exactly. I don't know where Instagram is, but I'm going to have to come clean now. There have been plenty of people who have come on here, a handful at least, and said that, they've had eating disorders, diabulimia to be specific, and they learned how to do it at diabetes camp. I'll never forget a woman telling me I would have never known that I could have done this with my insulin to lose weight, and with my insulin and my food to lose weight, had I not gone to diabetes camp. And that's where people showed me how to do it. So even that's a coin flip. Everything's a coin flip, Mallory.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's your episode name. This is After Dark Coin Flip. Well, that's perfect.
Coin flip.
That's great. I'm so happy that I came up with that, because my only note is LWI, living while impaired is what I had. We're going with coin flip. Yeah, I mean, honestly,
I like it.
Right? It's just that, I don't know. You know what I mean? Have you ever gone out in the heavy rain and put a paper cup in running water and watched it go one way and ran down to the bottom of the hill and got it and brought it back up and done it again, and the cup ends up on the other side of the road? That's just sort of how.
I can't say I have.
Well, it's because you grew up in a time where people had digital stuff to keep them busy. But I was bored out of my mind, and we used to do stuff like that all the time. We'd go make little boats in the house and then race them in the rain and stuff. And I can remember as a kid thinking, why doesn't it always go to the same place? And that's how it makes me feel talking to you. I feel like if I could have grabbed you when you were 11 and ran you back up to the hill and dropped you back in again, you might have come out somewhere else. It's just really,
but
really
there's
weird.
no way to tell,
Yeah, and I love your attitude that you're listen, I went through it and here I am. Because, by the way, you're a respectable person now, right?
Yeah,
mostly.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly, yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Little cocaine once in a while. What are we talking about?
I mean, I would never buy it, but if it's offered, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Make sure you tell people your joke. I want you to keep your job.
Yeah. I mean, because who can tell at this point? But no, and I think that I, behind the scenes, certainly had in the past was doing things that were just whoa, okay, but always maintained appearances of being one way or the other and respectable. And I would argue I've always been respectable deep down, but now I have self-respect. That's what I'm getting at, is that I respect myself. I have a wonderful husband. I want to have a family, and I respect myself to take care of myself, to be there for them as long as I can, and to show up and be present. Like, that's what it's all about. Presence of mind, and not trying to check out, because at a certain point it's, it can get kind of selfish. And I don't want to call people with substance abuse issues selfish there. That is not what I'm saying at all. But people who love you and care about you want you to be present with them.
Well, I have a couple of questions. Is your husband like what's the yin and the yang here? Is like the worst thing your husband ever did is like he sold candy bars once in middle school and kept one of the candy bars for himself? Or does he have a similar past to yours? Like, which way did you go when you were picking?
I think we could keep up with each other in the past.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but both of us are sort of like come out the other side, and fortunately have, because when you spend a lot of your life involved in that sort of scene, not everybody makes it out alive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a coin flip, honestly.
Yeah.
Why am I still here? Why, and so I never want to lose sight of that and be grateful for that.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any fear that you'll have a baby one day, it'll come out riding a water bong and dabbing?
I honestly, I don't think fear is the right word. I think if that happens, that I am so equipped to spot it. And like my husband and I joke all the time, like, our kids are not getting away with shit. Like they're never going to, because we're so in tune with what that looks like, mm-hmm. and know the impact that it had on us as we were younger. And so honestly, most of the fear that I have about my kids is just that I don't know, no fear yet, mm-hmm. but I'll let you know later.
Will you drink? Happens. Will you drink in front of your children and normalize drinking?
That is a question that I had never asked myself. I hadn't even thought of it, honestly. And it makes me wonder if you had asked my parents that question when they were contemplating becoming parents,
how your life might have changed.
Know what to say either.
Yeah, but it might have really changed your life.
It might have.
Yeah.
And look, they were only doing what was done to them. And it goes, generation after generation.
Yeah. Well, listen, go back a couple more generations, everyone's drunk. Seriously.
Right.
No, I'm being serious. Yeah. Everyone's smoking cigarettes, and everyone's drinking in the 60s, like, 60s, 70s, like right in there before that. All those poor, there's people that came home from World War II. Like, there's a lot going on in there. There's the Korean War's in there, Vietnam's in there. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of people like medicating themselves through that 50-year swath in there, But I was just wondering, because it's funny. Like, I mean, it probably makes it sound like I'm like, if you drink, you're bad and your kids are going to be addicts. And I'm like, I don't think that necessarily. But again, you really want to flip that coin? Like, it might come up heads, And so you got to make a decision. I will tell you, I will say something that I probably shouldn't say on here, but whatever.
That's okay.
There are people in my close family. My children have never been in a car with them.
Mm-hmm.
And when my children asked why they couldn't get in a car with them, we told them it was because they drink and drive. My kids have always known that's why they're not allowed to ride in a car with those people. So
I think that's
we didn't demonize them about it or like paint some horrible picture that they were bad people. It was just very matter of fact. They drink a lot and you never know when they're going to be drinking. And so I can't put you in a position where they'd be in control of you in a moving car. And that's it.
Yeah.
So I've always looked back on that decision to tell my kids that and to actually follow through, because there were a couple of times where there was a lot of pressure and we always stuck fast to it. And I actually feel like that's part of the reason why my kids have the feeling they have about alcohol. Like, I think that it was modeled.
Yeah.
For them
and I tend to remember. Yeah. In fact, I tend to remember an episode where you spoke about, I think Arden was with a friend of hers, and the family had gone out to dinner, and the parents were intoxicated, and she did not want to get in the car. Am I remembering that correctly?
It's very possible, although I've recorded like 950 of these. So I've also forgotten things that as I've been reminded of them, I'm stunned that I don't remember. So it's hard for me. I will tell you when we're done recording, I'll tell you one that like flipped me out that I completely forgot, that threw me off. But here's the problem. I got to go. I have another recording in a little bit. I'm so sorry. If you only could have figured out that headset sooner, we could have gone a little longer.
That's okay. No worries.
You're really delightful. You
too.
No, you're lovely. Thank you.
We've had a great time.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing this very, very much. This is
my pleasure.
You're the first person who's been like, listen, I was drinking when I was 12. And I don't mean that in a funny way. Like, I've laughed at you for reasons that I'm sure people will be mad at me for later. But I appreciate you saying that. Like, it's not that uncommon, and somebody should say it out loud once in a while. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just not. I don't know. To me, it's not worth the chance. I maybe you have a good argument, like those of you who would be like, oh, if they're going to drink, so I'll have them drink here. Maybe that's a good argument. I don't know. I chose to go with nobody's drinking. And because you're 10, you know what I mean? Or because you're 15 or because you're whatever. And, anyway, listen, let me say this too. I don't give a shit. Do whatever you want. It's a matter to me. Yeah. I mean, seriously, I don't care. But it's the way it strikes me.
I think it's not worth flipping the coin and just let kids figure it out. I don't ever want to normalize it the way that it was for me. And so I'll leave you with that.
Plus, think of how exciting and fun it will be. Like 35 years from now. How old will you be in 35 years? You'll be like 70, right? 68?
I'll be like 68, yeah.
Okay. Imagine you 68 sitting your like 29-year-old kids down and being like, hey, here's a thing Daddy and I never told you. And then tell them about the time you smoked heroin by mistake because you thought it was opium. Or let them listen to this podcast. Be like, I don't know if you guys know this, but years ago there used to be things called podcasts. Let me just get this out for you so you can listen to this real quick. That's mommy. Yeah, I know. And anyway, I'll see you in an hour and a half after you listen to this. Like, just think of watching their face while they listen. While they're just like, imagine your kids taking off futuristic headsets and turning to each other and going, hey, at least she wasn't having sex when she was 12. Like, you know what I mean? Like it just, it'll be so much fun.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm still trying to get my headset to work still 35 years from now.
Well, exactly. You'll still have problems with technology, but your kids will be like, that's why there was no vodka in the house? Get out of here. Okay. All right. I get it now. No, that'll be so much fun to tell. Please do not tell them before their brains are solidified.
I can give you that.
Oh my God. Well, I appreciate, listen, again, this was terrific. Thank you very much. Hold on for me for 1 second. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. I want to thank my guest today, and then I want to thank Omnipod for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Omnipod.com/Juicebox. Go take those pods for a test drive, or just get started with the Omnipod 5. Ooh, with the Omnipod DASH. You can't decide, but you kind of know what you're thinking about, right? You want the algorithm or don't you? You want the 5, you want the algorithm. You don't, you want the dash. You're halfway there. Omnipod.com/Juicebox. Get your seats to the Touched by Type 1 event. Get your seats to the Touched by Type 1 event at touchedbytype1.org. And don't forget to find them and follow on Facebook and Instagram. I'll see you in September at Touched by Type 1's big event. A diabetes diagnosis comes with a lot of new terminology, and that's why I've created the Defining Diabetes series. These are short episodes where Jenny Smith and I go over all of the terms that you're going to hear living with diabetes, and some of them that you might not hear every day. From the very simple bolus up to feet on the floor. Don't know the difference between hypo and hyper? We'll explain it to you. These are short episodes. They are not boring. They're fun. And they're informative. It's not just us reading to you out of the dictionary. We take the time to chat about all of these different words. Maybe you don't know what a Kussmaul respiration is. You will when you're done. Ever heard of a glycemic index and load? Haven't? Doesn't matter. You'll know after you listen to the Defining Diabetes series. Now, how do you find it? You go to juiceboxpodcast.com, up top to the menu, and click on Defining Diabetes. You'll be able to listen right there in your browser, or you'll see the full list of the episodes and be able to go into an audio app like Apple Podcasts or Spotify and listen to them at your pace. Download them into your phone and listen when you can. The Defining Diabetes series is made up of 51 short episodes that will fast forward your knowledge of diabetes terminology.